Good morning, everyone. I'm Denise Myler, Chair of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. I would like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones and all electronic devices at this time. Echo. Has that been corrected? Okay. Also, while masks are no longer mandatory, please feel free to wear one if you believe it is required and necessary for your own well-being. With 7 board members present, I'd like to now call today's meeting to order. In addition to the 7 board members, we also have our ex officio members, George Augusto, representing Russell Redding, Secretary for the Department of Agriculture, Kristen Heidingsfelder, representing Pat Brown, Secretary for the Department of Revenue, and Jennifer Langen, representing Stacy Garrity, State Treasurer. Thank you, ex officios, for joining us. I'd now like to ask everyone to please stand and join me in a recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, October 17th, to discuss personnel matters pending litigation and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters coming before the board. We will now hear from Sugar House HSP Gaming, doing business as Rivers Casino Philadelphia, and the Office of Enforcement Counsel regarding the Category 2 license renewal of Sugar House HSP Gaming, which operates the Rivers Casino in Philadelphia. I would ask if there are any non-attorneys who will be presenting evidence today in this proceeding, that they please stand and be sworn in by the court reporter at this time. Thank you. I would also ask that anyone who's going to speak to please state and spell your name for the court reporter prior to your presentation.
Good morning. John Donnelly, Donnelly, on behalf of Rivers Philadelphia Sugar House HSP Gaming LP. With me today are Eric Althouse, the General Manager, Lorraine Davis, who's Director of Compliance, and Jonathan Todd, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who will be our witnesses today. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Althouse.
Good morning, Board. My name is Eric Althouse, EricAlthaus, and good morning.
Good morning.
First, I'd like to start with Rivers Casino being a great place to work. Sorry. There you go. We thrive on having a good culture for our team members, looking for competitive wages, just a full of engagement and people that enjoy to come to work. A proud community partner, being a good neighbor and being very involved in the community is what we thrive for and take great pride in. And then a strong economic engine. We've been a catalyst to help, the Fishtown region pretty much thrive over the years, and we look to be a very profitable and revenue property for many years to come. So our journey. 2005, Rush Street purchased the land, which was the Sugar House Refinery. Obviously, we went through many issues in just cleaning it up. For instance, there was an open sewer that we had to spend a lot of time and resources to clean up the area. Excuse me. And then going into 2008, where the financial crisis obviously affected the entire world, we had to, really pretty much regroup and determine how we were going to establish, our plan of action, build the property, and then proceed forward. Going into 2009, we broke ground, and then officially in 2010, we opened as the very first U.S. Metro casino outside of Atlantic City and Las Vegas. Our commitment overview. So back in 2018, an article came out from Forbes magazine that put Fishtown as one of the most interesting places to move to. Crime has been down ever since, development up and on the incline, and just walking around the area with tremendous number of people just walking up and down the Riverwalk has really made the area a very nice place to just socialize. So. All right, our history since expansion and the rebranding. So that happened in 2016. We officially launched in 2018 Philadelphia's first land-based sportsbook in the temporary location right by the north entrance. In 2019, we launched our first mobile and online sportsbook. And then in 2019 also, we also rebranded into the Rivers Casino name. And that's part of our Rush Street corporate ownership, where we try to make all of our 5 casinos into the Rivers branch. That's how why we transitioned from Sugar House to Rivers Casino. On to the next slide. The property overview, just a few highlights there. We currently have 1,522 slot machines, 72 standalone table games, 28 poker tables, and we're up to 7 restaurants and bars. Total capital investment since opening, we're up to $500 million, and excuse me, and that is from the ground up. Slot capital reinvestment. So with the expansion came $143 million, $165 million in total. Some of the highlights in that was $2 million in team member workspace. As we continue to grow and expand, we realized that we didn't have as much office space to obviously house everyone, to again assist in having a very a nice work-life balance and having the workspace to be able to accomplish your daily task. We also opened up our Mian restaurant. Obviously, with us being right on the border of Chinatown, we have a lot of Asian clientele that comes in, and that was one of the biggest things that they asked for, was an Asian concept. So that was, by the most part, very something that we wanted to make happen, and it's been very successful ever since. Key gaming initiatives. With obviously most of our casino being in slot machines, we have put in $10 million in slot reinvestment, $2 million in table games and poker improvements, and then $1 million in support to ensure that everything is on the up and up. The picture up there is a brand new refurbishment of the high limit room that we did last year. Brand new carpet, slot bases, chairs, lighting. It really welcomed a nice space walking from the main casino floor into the high limit room. Non-gaming initiatives. So the key highlights on here is the River Suites. I'm very proud of this. It's something that we has spoken about since pre-opening, to finally have a hotel that's going to be associated with the property. And this is big news for us. This does a lot of things that we haven't currently been able to do. For one, a lot of our patrons that come in and enjoy us, summertime hits, and obviously we slow down because everyone head down to Atlantic City because they want that staycation and going a little bit further away. So us having a hotel is going to assist us in keeping those people within the state. More importantly, people from New York, that it's a somewhat of a little bit farther drive to come down and make the round trip drive, whether it's going to be 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, depending on it's exactly where you live. So having a hotel that we can house those people up for, again, a night, 2 night, a good heavy weekend is something that we haven't been able to do, and very excited to have that in our portfolio. One of the key features of that is having a basketball court. Obviously, with Philly being a very big sports town, and go Phillies last night, having a basketball court in our property, I'm happy with that because I play basketball myself. So we can settle our meetings, and if we don't have a disagreement on something, we can take it to the court and settle it that way. So. And the good thing also about the hotel, it's not connected to us, but it's right on the other side of Penn Treaty Park, which connects the Riverwalk. So if you do want to take a casual walk along the Riverwalk to the property, to the hotel, we do have that. We also purchased a full-size shuttle bus that will take people to and from the hotel as well. So we are still looking for that to open in Q4 of this year. Next slide, interactive gaming. Some of the key highlights on here. We do offer the 2 platforms. We have the Rush Street Interactive, RSI, and we also have the Roar Digital, and we have 4 brands associated throughout those. The other good stat on this slide is that of the 10 team members, 9 of them reside in the city of Philadelphia, which is good for us as well. Next slide, being a strong economic engine. $2 billion since opening in taxes to the Commonwealth, $1.7 billion in taxes also to the state and the Commonwealth, $315 million to the city of Philadelphia, and then $65 million to the school district. So very proud of those statistics. Online gaming, 524 to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, $458 million also to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and then $66 million to the city of Philadelphia. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rainey Davis. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson Smiler and Commissioners. Lorraine Davis, D-A-V-I-S. I'm the Director of Compliance. I'm here today on behalf of Rivers Casino Philadelphia to talk about our compliance commitment. We are very proud of our commitment to gaming compliance. We have established good relationships with all the various departments within the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board, as well as the on-site state police and the City of Philadelphia Police Department. We have regular conversations to keep everyone informed of things that are happening with the property. Another part of our commitment is the prevention of unattended children and underage gaming at our gaming facility. We have sophisticated equipment at our entrances to scan IDs. Our team members complete ID training on an annual basis. Signage is posted throughout our surface parking lots, our parking garage, and at every entrance. The safety of our team members and guests is a top priority of ours. We have recently upgraded the entrance scanners, technology that is a weapons detector as well. This technology is now the same technology that is used at all of the stadiums. Additional surveillance cameras and enhanced lighting have both been installed to both the exterior surface lots as well as the parking garage. We understand the responsibility that comes with serving alcohol, and we take that responsibility very seriously. Responsible Alcohol Management Program requires 50% of the alcohol service staff to be trained. Currently, we have 100% of our team trained as of September 26, 2023. That equates to 484 team members. We train additional departments, including our marketing, player development hosts, player services management, poker, security, slots, table games, as well as our valet team members. With the opening of a hotel, a new training course will be introduced on the topic of human trafficking. This is an important topic everywhere in the United States right now. And it will be the training our team members, I'm sorry. This topic is very important. This is an important topic everywhere right now. And we are concerned. We want to make sure that our team members are trained and hit the ground running with safety, alcohol management, and human trafficking, and the hotel is successful at launch. And with that, I turn it over to Jonathan to talk about our community partnerships.
Good morning. Jonathan Todd, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, TODD. So at Rivers, we're committed to fostering a culture where our team members are supported and celebrated, our guests enjoy a welcoming and inclusive entertainment experience, and our partnerships and philanthropic efforts are allocated equitably throughout the greater Philadelphia region. Our motto is that culture counts, and it's centered around three core tenets: our team members, our property, and our community. And those efforts are reflected in being voted 16 times as one of the Philadelphia's best workplaces by multiple publications. Next slide, please. Rivers strives to recruit and retain a dynamic workforce that reflects the diversity of our guests and surrounding communities. Through investments in workplace culture and team member experience, we've established ourselves as a preferred employer of choice. And that's been highlighted actually in a recent diversity report that was released where we had the highest number of minority employees in the state. Something else we're proud about is our pay for skill for critical positions such as dealers, security, and cooks. Next slide, please. We offer comprehensive benefit packages for our team members, paid up PTO, tuition reimbursement, et cetera. Next slide, please. And we really approach our job opportunities as entry points to career pathways to success. We're particularly proud of our paid dealer school, which at $25 an hour offers the highest compensation in the state for that type of program. Also critically important are the 120-plus new jobs generated by our new amenities, Martirano's Prime and Sicilian Slice, as well as our soon-to-be-open River Suites Boutique Hotel. So Greater Philadelphia has a vibrant ecosystem full of rich history and distinct character, and we pour back into neighborhoods and communities throughout the city, thoughtfully and strategically. The city's primary areas for growth, which include things like poverty, public safety, education, workforce development, arts, culture, health, and wellness, serve really as a guide for our support and resource allocation through sponsorships, donations, volunteerism, and in-kind contributions to organizations and stakeholders throughout Philadelphia. Our commitment to corporate social responsibility is unwavering. Slide. The commitment is reflected by donating over $16 million to Greater Philadelphia nonprofit organizations since the property opened. Another thing that's really important to us is doing business with a broad cross-section of vendors and suppliers, and it truly aligns with our Culture Counts approach to our property. This past quarter, we reported our highest MWBE non-construction participation since 2018, and we're very proud to share that we have 59% MWBE participation at River Suites, our aforementioned boutique hotel. There are always opportunities to improve these numbers, and we continue to work closely with diverse chambers of commerce, the Eastern Minority Supplier Development Council, the Women's Business Enterprise Center, the city's Office of Economic Opportunity, and many other partners. As Eric mentioned, it's a great time to be a Philadelphia sports fan, and we celebrate our partnerships with NBC Sports, the Philadelphia Flyers, 97.5 The Fanatic, and more. Our Rivers Gives initiative engages team members with an abundance of volunteer opportunities that positively impact our surrounding neighborhoods and beyond. The timing of this is truly serendipitous because yesterday we embarked on a property-wide initiative called National Rivers Gives Day of Service, where we partnered with Temple Health's Fox Chase Cancer Center to prepare care packages for their patients, as well as a breast cancer awareness walk, and we're featuring Fox Chase as our change donation program recipient throughout the month of October, where guests and team members can contribute. So we look, whether it's Fox Chase or other organizations, to cultivate and build meaningful relationships that result in impact for the programs and services that they provide. Next slide. So again, we have philanthropic efforts that last throughout the year, whether it's cultural celebrations or recognitions, partnering with different organizations, really to make sure that a diverse cross-section of different partners are represented. Philadelphia is such a vibrant and diverse city, and we want to make sure that our impact is allocated equitably. Whether it's our turkey drive or volunteering for MLK Day of Service, it's October, so breast cancer awareness is something that's very important to us. Again, we're really meaningful in our approach to being stewards in the communities that we serve. Next slide, please. And again, just additional partners that we align with and have collective impact throughout the city and beyond. And the list continues. And, we don't seek out awards, but it is affirming to be recognized for our efforts over the years, whether it's best gaming, best of slots, best dining and nightlife, et cetera. And with that, thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Chairman, that ends our formal presentation. I'd move the PowerPoint into evidence. There's no objection.
Any objection?
No objections.
Okay. Enforcement Council, do you have any questions?
Good morning. We do. David Tepper, TEPPER, on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Turning to slides 10 through 12, other than River Suites, are there any plans in the works, either renovations or new projects at Rivers Casino Philadelphia?
Yes, I'll take that. So we are currently working on one project right now. So we gave notice to Gino's, and we're going to turn that into a quick service, and that restaurant is going to be called Flipped. It's going to offer pretty much all, quick service items, hamburgers, hot dogs, quesadillas, milkshakes, French fries, kind of a menu that we are currently offering in somewhat of our Jack's restaurant. And then for the future, we're kind of looking at Jack's as far as to do that and do some changes there for a facelift for that property as well.
On slide 14, you note the amount of taxes paid since opening. Can you break it down since your last license renewal in 2016?
Yes. Since 2016, we're looking at 1.4 billion in total. Of that, it breaks out into 1.2 billion to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, 231 million to Philadelphia, and 38 million to the school district.
And turning to slide 23. Has Rivers Casino Philadelphia experienced an increase in issues retaining staff members? And if so, what steps have you taken to retain employees?
Yeah, since COVID, it's been extremely hard to have a staff full of very engaged team members. Just the human capital has been way down. We've done a lot of initiatives to ensure that we have the proper staffing levels to accommodate the business needs. Some of those are more or less in tune to training programs to ensure they have the right skills. We have done some wage analysis and increased some salaries and wages across the board. We started more recognition programs. We rolled out 2, particularly in the last 6 months. We started one-on-one sessions with the majority of the team members, and that is where a member of management meets with the team member at least once a quarter to have a face-to-face interaction just to ensure that that team member relationship and team member building stays true throughout their entire tenure at work. Those are some of the main ones that we focused on.
Thank you. And how many of your team members are full-time versus part-time?
That breakout is of the 1138, 926 full-time, 173 part-time team members, 37 on-call, and we currently have 2 temps.
And turning to slide 24, are any of these benefits available for the part-time on-call and temporary employees?
Yes, there is a list of incentives for part-time. It's a pretty long list. Voluntary life, AD&D, short-term disability, critical illness, 401k, EAP, flexible spending accounts, and PTO.
Thank you. And regarding your community partnerships, do you expect any major changes to your level of charitable giving and community partnerships?
We're extremely proud of what we've done so far, and we'll continue to stay true to that. Even when talking about the Rivers Gives program, that's something outside of the requirement according to our license that we provide and continue to move forward with. We of course will always look for future possibilities and see what makes the most sense for us.
And in Rivers Casino Philadelphia's opinion, has skill games had an impact on your business?
I would say it absolutely has. Since these illegal games, they're not reportable revenues to the state, it's really hard to tell, how much they potentially have affected us. But just knowing enough to know that, it's still a very similar type of gaming. So as gaming has increased over the years, I think we would be foolish to think that it hasn't affected us. But since we don't have those numbers public, it's hard to say how much.
Thank you. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no further questions.
Thank you. Any board members have any questions? Commissioner Manzano-Diaz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first question I have is, are you doing 3-on-3 basketball?
Possibly.
It's a big thing. Okay. I just went to a tournament, so that's why I'm asking you. It's very exciting. 10 minutes, and the game is over.
There you go.
On slide 23, you say that you have, Mr. Todd, 41% female, 61% are minorities. Can I get a breakdown of are they African American, Latinos, Asians, a breakdown of your minorities?
Sure, we don't have those exact statistics for you right now, but can certainly provide that information for you.
Okay, thank you. And on slide 28, you have $10 million average annual non-construction spend with local business, and then you have 5 million average annual non-construction spend with minority and women-owned business. Do you have a total in terms of both, in particular with the spend of minority and women-owned business? Do you have a total? Because this says it's an average annual, but if you could provide us with the total spend that you have with women-owned and minority-owned business, that would be helpful, and a breakdown in terms of African-American, Latino, et cetera, Asian. I would like to know about that, okay?
Sure. Can absolutely provide that information for you as well.
Thank you. The other question I have is, you just did a lot of construction, and this talks about non-construction spend, but what about the construction spend? You just built a hotel. And so I'd like to know what the breakdown was in terms of the construction spend, in terms of women and minority-owned. You just spent a lot of money building a hotel, and I'd just like to know how much of that went to minority and women-owned businesses.
We are actually leasing the hotel. We're leasing 62 rooms, so we don't oversee any of the construction for the actual property. What they're giving us is a white box, so we have partial involvement with just kind of the fine tune and finishing some of the FF&E install, but nothing with the actual development of the property.
Who's your third-party developer?
I'm sorry?
Who's your third-party developer?
Ira
Looper.
and one of his partners, he's a pretty well-known developer in the city. I'm sure board members have heard of him.
Okay.
And it's the old battery building that it was kind of an abandoned building for years and years. It's been electrical generation plant for the city. It really invite everybody to go over. It's really going to be cool. Every room is different because they've retrofitted the building, and it's going to have a public space, some wedding planners in there, events centers, basketball, and we have 62 rooms that we lease out.
Okay. But in regards to the hotel, you didn't, because you're leasing it, you're saying that you don't have the numbers for the construction, but other construction numbers for your casino. Do you have a breakdown of what you, because this doesn't include construction spend. So if you could give us that breakdown on your construction spend, I would appreciate that. Okay.
Absolutely, look at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? No. I have two follow-up questions, piggybacking on Commissioner Manzano-Diaz. On slide 28, where you talk about a newly formed diversity and inclusion subcommittee, inclusive of procurement, HR, and external resources, who's involved in that committee, and what's the intention of, what is it supposed to accomplish?
Sure. So as my title alludes to, I'm actually the first position at our property or other properties to have a specific DEI title. And I think that speaks to Rush Street Gaming and Rivers' commitment to prioritizing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I'm the chair of that committee, but it also has participation from leadership. Eric is a member of that committee, our VP of Finance, our VP and General Counsel as well, and HR. And then we have other members of procurement and marketing as well, just to make sure that we have a diverse cross-section representation. And so we go through the numbers, similar information, statistics that have been provided today to identify where we're doing well and can lean in more meaningfully to, as well as opportunities for growth, whether it's through supplier diversity, whether it's identifying different spaces and team members that would be viable for ascension and promotion that reflect the diversity of our team members, our guests, and community, as well as brainstorming and participating in thought partnership on additional ways and pathways to just being a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive property when it comes, again, to those three core tenets. So we meet quarterly, and then we have smaller conversations really every week or two about specific topics related to that. But again, it's a very participatory group, and I'm proud to be the leader of that and make sure that they're not just placeholder meetings, but we're really being productive.
And when was this committee established?
I can get the exact date to you back when it was established, but
This year, last year?
Prior to my joining, I've been at the property for about a year, but it was established prior to me joining the property.
And with regard to construction, I know you mentioned you're doing a facelift of Jack's, and so there will be some construction going on within the property. I would hope that this newly formed subcommittee would be able to try to reach out to some of the minority contractors. I know there's an African-American electrician, Larry McRae, that could possibly do some work. So I would just encourage you in this committee to, at least going forward as far as construction projects, try to be a little more inclusive, because that seems to be the Achilles heel of almost every industry and every casino that comes before us. So,
Absolutely.
and if there are no other questions, we'll move on to, do you have something else?
No,
Okay,
I'm
if there-
just looking to see if my fellow commissioners have questions.
No? All right, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to Enforcement Council. Do you have a presentation?
The Office of Enforcement Counsel does not have a formal presentation, but wishes to make a brief statement.
Proceed.
Prior to today's hearing, I provided Rivers Casino Philadelphia with an update to information provided by the Pennsylvania State Police Bureau of Liquor Control Enforcement, confirming that no actions have been taken by the Bureau since Rivers Casinos Philadelphia public input hearing. OEC requests that this be admitted into the record. Additionally, the Office of Enforcement Counsel provided Rivers Casino Philadelphia with copies of consent agreements, compliance conference memos, and warning letters, along with Rivers Casino Philadelphia's responses that have occurred since River Casinos Philadelphia's public input hearing. Specifically, OEC requests that an exhibit including 2 consent agreements, an exhibit including 3 compliance conference memorandums, an exhibit including 9 warning letters issued by the Office of Enforcement Counsel, and Rivers Casino Philadelphia's responses be admitted into the record, and that the exhibits, which include compliance conference memorandum and warning letters of responses, be marked as confidential. While the Office of Enforcement Counsel will not provide a formal presentation to the board, the Office of Enforcement Counsel would like to note for the record that it has submitted the final background investigation reports with its recommendation to the board, and the Bureau of Licensing has submitted the renewal suitability report to the board, which encompasses reports from all necessary offices and bureaus under the board's jurisdiction. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel is available for any questions the board may have regarding the information provided.
Rivers Philadelphia, do you have any questions for Enforcement Council?
None, thank
And
you.
do you have any objection to their exhibits?
None.
Board members, do you have any questions for Enforcement Council? No? All right. Rivers Philadelphia, would you like to make any final statements or comments before we?
Yeah, just short one. Everybody here in this room started out in 2005 when this first was dreamed up. And at the time, no one knew what was going to happen. But I think today demonstrates everyone in this room should be very proud. This group took an abandoned site on the riverfront that was dreadful looking with sewers running through it, and is now a thriving economic engine. It's increased the neighborhood and helped property values in the neighborhood, helped crime. We paid, as this slide shows out, $2 billion in taxes, $1.7 billion in other taxes, $315 million and $65 million. Those numbers don't mean much, but billions, that's $1,000 million. This is an incredible engine that has created economic opportunity and jobs and careers for a lot of people and changed a ton of people's lives around. So I think everybody should, I had nothing to do with it, but everybody else in this room has done a great deal to create something out of nothing that was here, and I'm happy to be on the sidelines looking at that. And with that, I ask that you renew our application, our license. And also, I understand that later on, you'll be considering the sports and online gaming certificates, so I'd move that those be approved at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. OEC, is there anything else you'd like to add?
We have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. That concludes this proceeding. This matter will be put before the board for a vote later this morning during the Bureau of Licensing's portion of the agenda. Our next order, thank you. Our next order of business this morning is the consideration of the board meeting transcripts and minutes from the July 26th meeting. May I have a motion to approve the transcript and minutes of the board's July 26, 2023 meeting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board approve the minutes and transcript of the July 26, 2023 meeting.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted. Now we will hear from our Executive Director, Kevin O'Toole.
Good morning, Chair Smiler, members of the board. Today, for my Executive Director's report, I'd like to focus on the two reports that are issued usually in early October. October 1st is a target date for both the board's annual report as well as the board's annual diversity report. This year, our team had these reports done 4, 5, 6 days earlier than October 1st. But an awful lot of work goes into these reports. And what's particularly rewarding and interesting is the fact that they're not identical year in and year out. You'll find an awful lot of new information because things just seem to change year in and year out. New activities, progress in things that may have started the previous year, new initiatives from a regulatory perspective, and new initiatives from the casino's perspective. So, rather than wait to the end, I'd like to thank our Office of Communications for coordinating the annual report, Doug Harbach and Richard McGarvey. They interact with all of our directors who provide the input and the content that goes into the annual report. And I'd also like to thank Moselle Daniels, our Director of Diversity, and Sharon Reisinger, our Diversity Specialist, for continuing to do an outstanding job in putting the diversity report together. The collection of data is enormous, so to be able to keep that in an organized way and to present it in a way that anyone can understand and gain from that report is very valuable. I'd like to just kind of share a couple of sections of those reports that I read and that we don't necessarily talk about too frequently. With respect to the annual report, it describes how the board makes a concerted effort to be transparent in much of its work, in all of its work, on behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth. One illustration that is mentioned in our annual report is the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board Speakers Bureau. The Speakers Bureau is coordinated by our Office of Communications. This past fiscal year, the Office of Communications, along with board members, met with over 24 community groups throughout the fiscal year. This outreach helps to ensure that the public has firsthand information on the oversight work of the agency and how gaming taxes from legalized gambling has a very positive effect on their communities. And also in the annual diversity report, which was released in late September, one aspect of that report, which I'd like to mention this morning, recounts the difficult adjustments for casinos that resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic. I did not share notes with Eric Althouse. He mentioned those challenges as well. But in the face of those challenges, the casinos, and not just Rivers Philadelphia, but all of the casinos, they remain committed to prioritizing the professional development of workers through mentorship programs and through tuition reimbursement programs for continuing education. These employee training and retention efforts have consistently resulted in noteworthy internal promotions within the casino industry in Pennsylvania. And before I conclude, October is also significant because it marks that approximate time frame of 5 years of expanded gambling in Pennsylvania through interactive gaming, which comes in a variety of forms: online slot games, online table games, live studio table games, online poker, sports wagering, which is both a retail product and an online product. Our annual report includes detailed information, as it is required to by the statute, on interactive gaming revenue and taxes collected from that activity. I'm pleased to report that that activity continues to grow, at least on the iGaming side. With respect to slots, online table games, and online poker, for the month of September 2023, it was in excess of $159 million, the largest amount of iGaming revenue generated in 1 month over the past 5 years. So it's very promising to see that product be embraced by those people who enjoy gambling. So that's my report for today. Thank you, Chair Smiler and members of the board.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we will hear from the Director of Budget, David Wren. Dave?
Good morning, Dave Wren, RHEN. Good morning, Chair Smiler and board members. Today I have 2 parts of the presentation, discussion of first quarter board expenses, and then presentation of the 2024-2025 budget. Board expenses for the first quarter of the fiscal year, or the period July through September, were $10,736,523. 93.6%, or $10,048,147,000 in expenses were for payroll, while the remaining 6.4%, or $668,376, were for operating expenses. Overall expenses were $369,000, or 3.6% higher than the first quarter of last year. This includes an increase of $444,000 in personnel expenses and a decrease in $74,000 in operating expenses. Average payroll expenses for the quarter were $100,000 higher per payroll than last year due to the increase in the employee count. Salary costs were $5,898,000, or 58% of personnel costs, and benefit costs were $4,133,000, or 41% of personnel costs. The largest operating costs included $143,000 for subscriptions and database services, $143,000 for real estate and parking leases, $140,000 for interagency billings from the Office of Administration, and $82,000 for annual license fees for document management and workflow software. That concludes my brief remarks on the first quarter. I'd be happy to take any questions or move into the budget proposal.
Any questions or comments for Dave? Nope, you can move into the next part of your presentation.
Thank you. The proposed requests are for the 24-25 budget are $60,720,000 for administration, which includes oversight of the casinos, internet gaming, and sports wagering, $475,000 for video gaming terminals administration, and $280,000 for fantasy contest operations. The administrative request of $60,720,000 includes $53,740,000, or 88% of the budget for personnel costs. The budget request includes 20 new positions and 391 positions overall. The new positions are primarily in the Offices of Enforcement Counsel, Sports Wagering Operations, and the Gaming Lab. The budget includes salary and benefit rate increases consistent with union negotiated contracts and at levels consistent with what other agencies throughout the Commonwealth use. There are 2 scheduled union negotiated salary increases next fiscal year, 2% in July 2024 and 2.25% in January of 2025. Amounts budgeted for specialized items such as overtime, retirement leave payouts, shift differential, among others, are based on historical averages. The operating portion of the budget is $7,250,000. This includes an increase of $2 million for the IT modernization project, which the board recently commenced. IT modernization will improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the board and streamline information gathering. The remainder of the operating budget is primarily for real estate, leases, investigative expenses, our hardware and software costs, and telecommunications, which are the traditional cost drivers for the budget. The proposed budget would be funded through a combination of $7.1 million in restricted revenue, which is application and license fees, and chargebacks of the gaming lab, and the remaining $53,620,000 coming from drawdowns assessed by the Department of Revenue against revenue of the operators. The video gaming terminal or VGT budget is $475,000. The personnel component of that budget is $450,000, and the operating portion is $25,000, which is primarily utilized for investigative costs and travel expenses. This budget is equivalent to the current year's appropriation. And finally, the fantasy contest budget request is $280,000. This budget request includes $270,000 for personnel and $10,000 for operating expenses. This budget is also level with the current year. That concludes my presentation on the budget. I'd be happy to take any questions and would appreciate a motion to approve the budgets.
Any questions or comments for Dave? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 budget request as described by the Director of Financial Management.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Now we will hear from our Human Resources Director, Danette Bixler-George.
Good morning, Chair, board members. The Office of Human Resources has one motion for your consideration today relative to the hiring of two individuals. Both individuals have completed the PGCB interview process, drug screening, and background investigation. First, we have Sarah Grudy, who has been selected as an Assistant Enforcement Counsel 1 in the Office of Enforcement Counsel and is recommended for hire by Cyrus Petrie, Chief Enforcement Counsel. Next, we have Bradley Kunkel, who has been selected as a casino compliance representative at Lady Luck Nemacolin Casino and is recommended for hire by the Bureau of Casino Compliance Management. Unless you have questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the hiring actions as indicated.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danette. Next is our Office of Chief Counsel, Steve Cook.
Morning. First, the agenda item for the Office of Chief Counsel is a final omitted regulation, which Assistant Chief Counsel Robert Wood will present.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Today, I have for your consideration final omitted regulation package 125-246, which moves table games, side wagers, and variations into final regulation status. Currently, these games and wagers are authorized as temporary regulations by the board. Prior to this morning's meeting, I provided the board with copies of these regulatory materials. If there are no questions, I would ask for a motion adopting.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt final omitted regulation number 125-246 regarding table games, variations, and side wagers as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board today are 4 petitions. Each of these petitions will be decided on the documentary record by agreement of the parties or because the Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the requested relief. In each of these matters, the board has, in advance of this meeting, been provided with all the documents filed of record. The first petition before the board today is a request from Interblock Gaming Products, LLC and Interblock USA, LC to have the board approve its purchase of certain gaming assets. By way of background, Interblock Gaming LLC is a licensed table games manufacturer, and Interblock USA LC is a licensed manufacturer designee. Both companies are in the business of developing and distributing electronic electronic games. The two companies are seeking to acquire the assets of Aruze Gaming America, Inc. Aruze is also a licensed manufacturer and a developer of and distributor of gaming equipment, which includes slot machines, electronic table games, and related hardware and software. Aruze filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in February 2023. During the bankruptcy proceedings, some of Aruze's assets were the subject of a June 2023 auction. Interblock Luxury Gaming Products won the right to buy some of these assets. Thereafter, the parties entered into a global compromise and settlement agreement and an asset purchase agreement. As a result of this transaction and those agreements, Interblock USA LC now owns and has the right to operate and service Aruze's electronic games. Both Interblock Luxury Gaming Products LLC and Interblock USA LC will continue to do business under their respective licenses. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the parties' request, subject to conditions outlined in their answer. OEC has also asked that certain information in the documentary record be held in confidence, and the Office of Chief Counsel would support that request, and the matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant Interblock Gaming Products LLC, doing business as Interblock DOO, and Interblock USA LC's petition as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. I further move that the Enforcement Counsel's request for confidentiality be granted.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board is Arthur Johnson's petition to lift the suspension of his gaming employee occupation permit. In December of 2021, Mr. Johnson was issued a gaming employee occupation permit to work as a table games dealer at the Hollywood Casino at Penn National Racecourse. In January 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint requesting that Mr. Johnson's gaming permit be suspended after he failed to comply with the special condition placed in his license. Specifically, Mr. Johnson owed money to the Internal Revenue Service, and he agreed in his statement of conditions that he would provide proof within 6 months of licensure that he had entered a payment plan or paid in full his obligation to the IRS. Subsequently, the board issued an order on May 24th, 2023, suspending Mr. Johnson's gaming employee occupation permit for failing to comply with that condition. In August of 2023, Mr. Johnson filed his request to lift his suspension of his permit, stating that he fulfilled his obligation to the IRS and providing proof that that in fact was true. Having reviewed this information and the evidence presented, OEC has no objection to Mr. Johnson's request in that he is now compliant with his special condition of his licensure, and they do not oppose the suspension being lifted, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant Arthur Johnson's petition to lift the suspension of his gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel. Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Next before the board is Richard Santiago's request to lift the suspension of his gaming employee level 2 occupation permit. Mr. Santiago held his G2 employee occupation permit and worked as a security assistant shift manager at the Live Casino and Hotel in Philadelphia. In June of 2022, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for an emergency suspension of Mr. Santiago's G2 permit after receiving notice that he'd been charged with multiple felonies. As a result of those charges, the board's executive director issued an emergency order suspending Mr. Santiago's permit. A hearing in this matter was subsequently held in June of 2022, and as a result of that hearing, the board issued an order continuing the suspension of Mr. Santiago's permit. In May of 2023, Mr. Santiago filed his request to lift the emergency suspension of his permit, stating that his criminal charges have been cleared and that he was acquitted of all charges after trial. OEC confirmed that Mr. Santiago was found not guilty of all charges, and as a result has no objection no objection to his request to lift the suspension of his permit, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board grant Richard Santiago's petition to lift the suspension of his gaming level 2 employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
The final petition before the board today is a request for removal from the self-exclusion list. On August 5th, 2012, an individual with the initials FAK placed himself on the list, choosing the lifetime self-exclusion option. On August 7th, 2023, FAK filed his request for removal from the list. FAK included in his petition a problem gambling assessment verification form signed by a certified assessment provider confirming that an assessment of FAK was performed and that problem gambling treatment was not recommended. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer stating that it has no objection to FAK's request given his compliance with the regulations and his submission of the problem gambling assessment, and this matter is now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant FAK's petition as described by the Office of Chief Counsel and that FAK be removed from the self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next, providing withdrawals or offering to the board withdrawals, surrenders, and reports and recommendations will be Deputy Chief Counsel Chad Zimmerman.
Good morning, Commissioners. The next matter before the board today pertains to several unopposed petitions to withdraw applications or surrender the credentials of the following individuals and entities: Monterrizo Limited, Ian Williams, Pala Canada Holdings LLC, Farzana Khalil, Matus 18 LLC, Tricia Taylor Boris, Peter Broughton, Constance Purcell James, David Grisson, and Dirk Gear. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objections to any of these withdrawals or surrenders. As such, if the board chooses to grant the request in each case, it would be doing so without prejudice to the requester. These matters are all now ripe for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board issues orders to approve the withdrawals and surrenders as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next before the board for consideration are 4 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations, along with the evidentiary record for each hearing, have been provided to the board in advance of today's meeting. Additionally, the persons involved have each been notified that the board would be considering their matter today and that each would have the ability to come forward and briefly address the board. If any of the persons who are subject to one of these reports and recommendations would like to address the board, I would ask them to come forward when their matter is called. Glenn Phillips is the first report and recommendation before the board today. Mr. Phillips holds a non-gaming employee registration and worked as a service technician for a company that provides electronic security services to the Pennsylvania casinos. On June 23, 2023, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking emergency suspension of Mr. Phillips' registration after receiving notice that he had been criminally charged with felony and misdemeanor offenses. Specifically, it is alleged that Mr. Phillips stabbed his neighbor during an altercation. As a result of Mr. Phillips' charges, the board's executive director issued an emergency suspension of his registration. A hearing in this matter was held on August 2, 2023. The Office of Enforcement Counsel appeared at the hearing offering testimony and documentary evidence. Mr. Phillips also appeared but did not testify or provide any evidence. He only stated that he was not contesting the suspension of his registration. Consequently, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that the suspension of Mr. Phillips' registration remain in effect during the pendency of his charges. This matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that the emergency suspension of Glenn Phillips' non-gaming employee registration remain in effect.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion is adopted.
Next before the board is a report and recommendation pertaining to John Rivas. Mr. Rivas was issued a gaming employee occupation permit and worked as a table games dealer at Live Casino Philadelphia. On October 25, 2022, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint seeking to revoke Mr. Rivas's permit after it was discovered that he had committed several procedural irregularities while dealing blackjack and Spanish 21. Specifically, he placed wagers with chips that were received from patrons as tips, and he failed to collect losing wagers and treated those wagers as a push. A hearing in this matter was originally scheduled for February 2nd of 2023. After several continuances, a hearing was ultimately held August 8, 2023. OEC appeared offering testimony and documentary evidence. Mr. Rivas failed to appear, and the hearing was held in his absence. Subsequently, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that Mr. Rivas's permit be revoked, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that John Rivas's gaming employee occupation permit be revoked.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Next is a report and recommendation relating to Ronald Green. On September 1st, 2017, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition to place Mr. Green on the board's involuntary exclusion list after an incident at Parks Casino where he threatened to kill casino staff, used a racial epithet towards a dealer, and refused to leave the casino when confronted by security. Additionally, Mr. Green had other incidents where he capped and pinched wagers, both considered cheating. Consequently, on January 10, 2018, the board placed Mr. Green on the involuntary exclusion list after a default judgment. On May 4, 2023, Mr. Green filed a request for removal from the exclusion list. OEC filed an answer objecting to the request, and a hearing was held in this matter in August of 2023. OEC appeared, providing testimonial and documentary evidence pertaining to incidents that led to Mr. Green's placement on the list. They also provided evidence and testimony showing that Mr. Green had violated his exclusion order 4 times since being placed on the list. Mr. Green appeared and testified on his own behalf, admitting the actions that resulted in the placement on the list. He stated he has changed his life since that time, has learned his lessons, and matured. He further admitted his exclusion violations. However, he stated he had not been to a casino since his most recent violation, which was December of 2022. A report and recommendation was issued recommending denial of Mr. Green's request for removal from the involuntary exclusion list. And this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that Ronald Green remain on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
The final report and recommendation today stems from a request for removal from the voluntary casino self-exclusion list by an individual with the initials AZ. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to this request. A hearing in this matter was held in August of 2023. OEC appeared and presented testimony and documentary evidence. AZ appeared and testified on his own behalf. Evidence presented at the hearing showed that on March 23, 2023, AZ electronically submitted a request to be placed on the casino self-exclusion list, choosing the 5-year self-exclusion period. On March 30, 2023, AZ filed the instant petition requesting early removal from the list. OEC presented evidence showing that AZ had properly filled out the self-exclusion paperwork and signed all acknowledgments, choosing the self-exclusion period, acknowledging that he had reviewed the forms and understood the consequences of his actions, and that licensees and operators could ban him from other venues, gaming and non-gaming, including hotels and restaurants. AZ testified that he did not carefully read the notice and request form, and that he only realized he was prohibited from entering non-gaming areas of the casino when he attempted to take his wife to a comedian at one of the Pennsylvania casinos. After hearing the evidence presented, a report and recommendation was issued recommending that AZ's request for removal from the casino self-exclusion list be denied, and this matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals as described by the Office of Chief Counsel, and that AZ remain on the casino self-exclusion list.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted.
That concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, Steve, and Chad. We will now have the Bureau of Licensing matters presented by the Director of the Bureau of Licensing, Sean Hannon.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Today's first licensing matter for your consideration is the renewal of Sugar House HSP Gaming LP's Category 2 license. The license renewal hearing for this entity is now complete. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report regarding the renewal. As a result, the license renewal is ready for your consideration. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to renew the Category 2 license for Sugar House HSP Gaming LP.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board grant the Category 2 license renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration are the renewal of interactive gaming and sports wagering certificates for Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing and Greenwood Gaming Racing, and the interactive gaming certificates for Mount Airy No. 1 LLC. This is the first group of certificates up for renewal, which were initially issued back in 2018. Each category of certificate carries a $250,000 renewal fee for a 5-year term. The Bureau of Licensing, Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement, Bureau of Gaming Operations, and Office of Sports Wagering Operations has completed its review of the documents, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report for each. I have provided you with draft orders for each and ask that you first consider the renewal of Category 1 licensee Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association LLC's interactive gaming certificates. Mountain View is renewing certificates for non-peer-to-peer games which simulate slot machines, non-peer-to-peer games that simulate table games, and peer-to-peer games. This is now ready for your consideration.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the interactive gaming certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration is the renewal of Mountain View Thoroughbreds sports wagering certificate.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the sports wagering certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Next for your consideration is the renewal of the interactive gaming certificates for Category 1 licensee Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment Incorporated. Greenwood is renewing certificates for non-peer-to-peer games which simulate slot machines, non-peer-to-peer games that simulate table games, and peer-to-peer games. This is ready for your consideration.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the interactive gaming certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration is the renewal of Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment Incorporated sports wagering certificate.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the sports wagering certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
The final certificate holder renewal for your consideration is Category 2 licensee Mount Airy No. 1 LLC's interactive certificates renewal. Mount Airy is renewing certificates for non-peer-to-peer games which simulate slot machines, non-peer-to-peer games that simulate table games, and peer-to-peer games. This is ready for your consideration.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board grant the interactive gaming certificate renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next licensing matter for your consideration is the renewal of the slot machine and table game manufacturer license for Aristocrat Technologies Incorporated. Aristocrat Technologies is a Nevada-based manufacturer of slot machines, table games, and associated equipment for use or play at licensed facilities in the Commonwealth. The company currently holds interactive gaming and video gaming terminal manufacturer license, in addition to the slot machine and table game licenses. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with draft orders and asked the board first consider the order to renew the slot machine manufacturer license for Aristocrat Technologies Incorporated.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the slot machine manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the order to renew the table game manufacturer license for Aristocrat Technologies Incorporated.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board grant the table gaming manufacturing license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Next, we have consideration of the slot machine manufacturer license renewal of Aristocrat Technologies Australia Pty Limited. Formed in Australia, the company's principal place of business is in North Ryde, New South Wales, Australia. Aristocrat Technologies Australia develops slot machine gaming content for sales and distribution to slot machine licensees through Aristocrat Technologies Incorporated. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to renew the slot machine manufacturer license for Aristocrat Technologies Australia Pty Limited.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the slot machine manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the approval of a gaming junket enterprise renewal license for Cutler VIP Tours Incorporated. Cutler VIP Tours provides customer travel and entertainment amenities for casino guests and enters into contracts with casino operators to provide these services. The Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement has completed its investigation of the company, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order to approve the Gaming Junket Enterprise Renewal License for Kotler VIP Tours Incorporated.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board grant the Gaming Junket Enterprise License Renewal as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Also, we have consideration of a conditional VGT establishment license for H&H Incorporated, doing business as Hardeep S. Brar Convenience Store located at 10 Mollystown Road in Pine Grove. The board may conditionally license an establishment provided the applicant has never been convicted of a felony, is current on state taxes, has submitted a completed application, and has not been convicted of a gambling law violation. A preliminary review of the applicant indicates that they meet these criteria. Please note this is strictly a conditional approval. Final approval will be based on the applicant meeting all the eligibility criteria provided in the statute. A final eligibility determination will follow investigation and site inspection by the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement. I provide you with a draft order and ask the board consider a motion to approve the conditional VGT establishment license for H&H Incorporated.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board grant the video gaming terminal establishment condition license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Next, there are principal, key employee, and qualifier licenses. The Bureau of Investigation provides you with a proposed order for 11 principals, 4 key employees, and 6 qualifiers. I ask the board consider the order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board grant the principal, key employee, and qualifier licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
There are also principal and key employee temporary credentials. The Bureau of Licensing provides you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary credentials for 2 principals and 13 key employees. I ask that the board consider the order approving these credentials.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next is the consideration of gaming employee permits and non-gaming employee registrations. The Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a list of 516 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits and 217 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask that the board consider a motion approving the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the applications for gaming employee occupation permits and non-gaming employee registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
The next matter for consideration is a withdrawal request. In each case, the license, permit, or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I have provided the board with 32 gaming and 6 non-gaming applicants. I ask that the board consider the order approving these withdrawals.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board grant the withdrawal of key employee gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
In addition, we have an order to renew the gaming service provider certification for the Norwood Company, as well as initially certify Knightsbridge Company, PA. I have provided you with a draft order and asked the board consider the order certifying these companies.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the gaming service provider certifications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And finally, for consideration are gaming service provider registrations. The Bureau of Licensing provides you with an order and an attached list of 2 registered gaming service provider applicants. I ask the board consider the order registering these gaming service providers.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the gaming service provider registrations as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Next is the Office of Enforcement Counsel, Cyrus Petrie.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Today, the Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 10 matters for the board's consideration, in which we will request the approval of 4 consent agreements and 6 involuntary exclusions. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 1 licensee Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, doing business as Parks Casino. The matter will be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel John Crow. At this time, I would request that all representatives for Parks please introduce themselves for the record, and that any non-attorney witnesses please stand and be sworn.
Good morning. My name's Grace Flanagan, Chief Compliance Officer for Parks Casino Flanagan, Flanagan.
Karen Ashford, Chief Legal Officer for Parks Casino, KARINASHFORD.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. John Crowe, CROHE, Senior Enforcement Counsel for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. This consent agreement is a result of incidents in which Parks failed to timely file renewal applications with the board for a principal entity license and a principal license. On June 10th, 2021, the board's Bureau of Licensing sent a courtesy reminder email with a renewal letter and renewal schedule to Parks, informing them that the renewal applications for principal entity licensee Racetrack OP Holding and principal licensee David Budd were due on February 8th, 2022, as both licenses were set to expire on August 8th, 2022. On April 27th, 2022, Parks contacted the Bureau of Licensing and requested an extension. The Bureau of Licensing responded to Parks that both applications were overdue, and it could not agree to an extension of the application due dates as they are statutorily mandated by the Act. Subsequently, Parks Casino submitted the renewal application for principal licensee David Budd on May 27, 2022, 108 days after the due date of the renewal application. After the due date, and the renewal application for principal entity licensee Racetrack OP Holding on June 21st, 2022, 133 days after the due date. The Office of Enforcement Counsel and Parks Casino respectfully request that the board approve the consent agreement and stipulations of settlement, and that Parks Casino pay a civil penalty of $18,075 as well as a $2,500 administrative fee for costs incurred by board staff in connection with investigations into this matter. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them at this time.
Parks, would you like to address the board?
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I wanted to thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you, board staff, for working with us on this matter. We agree to the facts as stated by Mr. Crow. We're not contesting them, and we agree to the fine. We just want to add, for background, Parks is committed to a strong culture of compliance. I'd like to give a little background as to where we were a year and a half and where we are now with respect to license renewals. When the license delays occurred in 2022, we had one paralegal responsible for the filing of all Parks and its affiliated entities' principal and key and entity applications across multiple states. For Pennsylvania renewals, our paralegal had relied on the staff reminder notices as a tickler. That notice went to outside counsel. Outside counsel did not send it to us in a timely manner. Nonetheless, we should have had a better tickler system than just that note. Since then, we have done a few things to remedy this. We no longer simply rely on that letter. We have a tiered tickler system relying on Outlook 30, 60, 90 days, not just to the paralegal, but also to other folks in our establishment, including directors, who have visibility into that, along with the licensee. When the timeline comes up very close, then we have meetings with management to ensure everybody knows it needs to get filed. In addition, we've increased licensing support, so there's an additional paralegal who supports our senior paralegal with these license renewals. We've also successfully onboarded a new software solution with a vendor that securely automates aspects of the license renewal, including form identification, completion deadlines, and reminders. So all in all, there's a lot more visibility. We also have a spreadsheet, a monthly report that gets generated and sent around to HR, compliance, and legal. So there's a lot more visibility in the process, and things aren't on one person. So I think we're in a much better place since we were a year and a half ago. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Marzano-Diaz.
Yes. When you said you had one paralegal to do the renewals, are you talking just solely about Parks or everything that you own?
For all of our gaming entities, so GG&E is the gaming license operator for Parks Casino. Then we have a few other licensed entities for the other casino, Parks Shippensburg, as well as our operations in other states.
So the one that was late was for Parks Casino. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. You've added a new paralegal. We've got two now. And then you have some software tickler system.
Correct.
And
yes.
then you have regular meetings on this, like quarterly meetings, or?
We have a monthly report that goes around, and yes, I personally meet with staff on a weekly basis to make sure everything's going where it should be.
Okay. And then ultimately, the buck stops where with regard to this compliance?
It would be with me as the Chief Compliance Officer.
Okay.
It's really ultimately my responsibility to make sure everything, including licensing, is complying with gaming law.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
And why did outside counsel not provide you with the information?
I'm not sure. It may have been just an administrative oversight that it just wasn't forwarded. I think that typically the notices would generally go to inside counsel. In the past, it was always going to our internal paralegal or our general counsel. I'm not really sure why, but for some reason, the notice just started going to outside counsel, and I guess there wasn't a routine to forward it to us on a regular basis.
Have you corrected that as well?
Yeah, I have. I've reached out to staff to make sure I'm the key point of contact so that everybody knows to reach out to me, and outside counsel knows to forward things as well to me.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickrnell moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Greenwood Gaming and Entertainment, doing business as Parks Casino, as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano-Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 4 licensee Stadium Casino Westmoreland, doing business as Live Casino Pittsburgh. The matter will be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel Michael Rowland. At this time, I would ask that the representatives for Live Pittsburgh please introduce themselves for the record, and that all non-attorney witnesses please stand and be sworn.
You swear, if you don't swear to you affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
So help you God.
I'm Tom Deal, VP of Legal for Live Casino Pittsburgh. And to my left,
Sean Sullivan, General Manager.
And Mike Keelan, Regulatory Compliance Manager.
And would you gentlemen spell your names for the court reporter, please?
certainly Thomas Deal, D-I-E-H-L.
Sean, S-E-A-N, Sullivan, S-U-L-L-I-V-A-N.
And Mike Keelan, K-E-E-L-O-N.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Michael Rowland, R-O-L-A-N-D, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. This consent agreement is a result of Live Casino Pittsburgh's failure to prevent underage access to its gaming floor. On or about November 12th, 2022, an underage patron, later determined to be 20 years of age, arrived at Live Pittsburgh with a group of age-appropriate patrons. The group approached the security checkpoint. Security scanned the underage patron's identification, and the system indicated that the patron was underage. The system automatically notified the surveillance department. The security officer returned the identification to the underage patron and allowed him to access the gaming floor. The officer then scanned a second identification in the group. That identification showed the correct age, but the identification itself was expired. The security officer allowed this patron access to the gaming floor as well. The underage patron and his group proceeded to sit at a bank of slot machines and began the game. Surveillance, which was previously notified by the underage scan at the checkpoint, alerted security, who located the group at the slot bank. Security discovered the underage patron and escorted him out of the casino. The underage patron was on the gaming floor for approximately 7 minutes and successfully gamed. The security officer in this incident was provided with final notice and coaching. The Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board approve this consent agreement and stipulation of settlement entered into between the parties. The terms of the settlement include that Live Pittsburgh shall pay a civil penalty in the amount of $10,000 to the board within 5 days of the board's order approving this consent agreement. Also, within 5 days, Live Pittsburgh shall pay to the board $2,500 for the costs incurred by the board staff in connection with this matter. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to address them at this time.
Live Pittsburgh, would you like to address the board?
Yes, just to briefly indicate that the facts as relayed by the Office of Enforcement Counsel are accurate, and we're here prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'd like to know, what have you instituted since this incident so that it doesn't happen again?
This incident was strictly a matter of human error. The equipment functioned properly. It indicated that the individual involved was underage. The security ambassador who happened to be working that particular post, because he was occupied with the next person who he believed was actually underage, the next person in line appeared to be younger than the one who actually was underage. Because his attention was divided, he missed the indicator on the system that the person he had just scanned was underage, went on to the next person, allowing the first person, the underage person, entry. When he got the second ID to scan and went back to the machine, he realized that the machine was still indicating that the preceding person was underage, and that's when he was aware of it. So the person, the security ambassador who was working the post, received individual training on entrance control by security management, as well as was placed on a final written warning.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
How many security officers do you have working at each entrance or location?
One.
And you did answer my question as far as what his distraction was and how that occurred.
I would add that we have weekly property protection meetings, and we meet compliance, security, surveillance, and we take these matters serious. You know, one of my favorite books is No Excuses by Brian Tracy, so we're not going to create excuses. But as discussed, it was a human error. We retrain that person, but we also take that message to the entire department and make sure they understand the importance of it and that they are reviewed with, if you will, the proper procedures. So we jump on these quickly. We hope one day we'll never have them, but when humans are involved, occasionally these things slip through the cracks. But we don't take it lightly. We take it very seriously. And retraining is part of that big step, as well as progressive discipline. If that gentleman makes another mistake, he'll be terminated. So we do go quickly on these.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano-Diaz moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Stadium Casino Westmoreland doing business as Live Casino Pittsburgh as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a second consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Category 4 licensee Stadium Casino Westmoreland doing business as Live Casino Pittsburgh. The matter will once again be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel Michael Rowland. All representatives for Live Pittsburgh remain present for this matter.
This matter is a result of Live Casino Pittsburgh's failure to enforce its self-exclusion list. On or about March 11th, 2022, a self-excluded individual entered Live Pittsburgh and presented identification to security. Security scanned the identification, and the computer alerted Live Pittsburgh surveillance that the individual was flagged for being on the casino self-exclusion list. Security returned the identification to the individual and allowed her to access the gaming floor. Surveillance notified security that a self-excluded individual had been granted access. The security officer who granted the individual access to the floor then noticed that the individual was flagged in the system. Security located the individual at a slot machine and escorted her from the floor. Security also confiscated a voucher from the slot machine worth $2.90. The self-excluded individual was on the gaming floor for approximately 5 minutes before being stopped by security. The security officer in this incident received verbal coaching for the error. In a second incident occurring on or about February 20th, 2023, a self-excluded individual entered Live Pittsburgh, walked past the security checkpoint without being stopped, and entered the gaming floor. While on the gaming floor, the self-excluded patron was served no less than 4 alcoholic beverages and played multiple slot machines. The self-excluded patron left and re-entered the gaming floor no less than 7 times during the visit. The self-excluded patron also approached the main cage without being properly identified as self-excluded and successfully completed a transaction that allowed her to receive a cash advance. The patron later returned to the main cage and presented her player's card in order to cash out a voucher. The cashier again failed to notice that the self-excluded patron's account was flagged. The transaction was completed, and the self-excluded patron walked away. After the self-excluded patron left, the cashier discovered the flagged account and alerted Live Pittsburgh Cage Management. Security located the self-excluded patron gaming at a slot machine, confirmed her identity, and confiscated her winnings, which included a voucher worth $150.45. The self-excluded individual was on the gaming floor for over 7 hours before being stopped by security. In this incident, the on-duty database marketing analyst received a written warning because it was his role to manually identify all possible matches, which include self-exclusions and the loyalty program on behalf of Live Pittsburgh. The Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board approve this consent agreement and stipulation of settlement entered into between the parties. The terms of the settlement include that Live Pittsburgh shall pay a civil penalty in the amount of $20,000 to the board within 5 days of the board's order approving this consent agreement. Also, within 5 days, Live Pittsburgh shall pay to the board $2,500 for the costs incurred by board staff in connection with this matter. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to address them at this time.
Live Pittsburgh, would you like to address the board?
Yes, I would. There's 2 issues here, 2 counts. The first count I'm going to address briefly because it's a little bit more straightforward. It's similar to what Mr. Keelan had indicated with the underage patron. The system of Veridocs, the ID system worked. We had the security ambassador made a human error by allowing them to proceed And he was appropriately coached and received a reprimand because of that. The second count is more complicated, and I think it's a little more difficult to unravel, so I'm going to try to do that up front. One of the things that took place where the patron here, who are obviously, because they're in a self-excluded list, will remain confidential. It's a woman who's 56 years old. So when she approaches the security entrance for the gaming floor, if she appeared physically to be below 30 or 35, she would typically be carded. There you're trying to screen people who are under the age of 21. So given her age, she would not be carded typically. So she would be able to move on and off the gaming floor as per usual. Where she would be flagged is whenever she has a transaction, okay? So she's on the gaming floor, on and off the gaming floor, approximately 5 hours, I think, before she makes her first transaction. And that's one of the things that Mr. Rowland had referred to earlier when she approached the cage. And I want to describe what took place there because I don't think it's quite evident unless you hear a little bit of the background. She approaches the cage cashier, who then checks the ID, which is where we would ideally want it to be flagged. So in this case, it looks like the cage cashier dropped the ball. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, running a casino is a team activity. Compliance is a team activity. There's a lot of layers that go into that. So part of what the cage cashier is depending upon is the data that they're reading, okay? And in this case, we have multiple casinos. We have a casino in Maryland, we have a casino in Pittsburgh, we have a casino in Philadelphia. In this case, the patron presented a loyalty card from Maryland, okay? Prior to our casino opening, those two, when you're building your database, the Maryland members were merged with the Pennsylvania ones. In some cases, and you refer to the paragraph 25 in here, we're talking about the name matching. If, in this case, and I'll make up a historic name, if you had John Kennedy and John Fitzgerald Kennedy, both had players' cards, had a player's card in two different casinos, and they merged them, the system won't automatically trigger those. They'll see John Fitzgerald Kennedy and John Kennedy as separate. This is a known issue, and then we have a manual process where we then take other factors, such as date of birth, address, what you'd expect, to be able to discern that John Kennedy and John Fitzgerald Kennedy are the same person, and then those cards would be merged. In this case, that manual process did not happen. And that's why when you skip down later on into the consent agreement, where it indicates that the the database analyst was the one that was reprimanded. I don't think without that explanation, it'd be obvious why someone, it looks like they made a mistake at the cage, whereas someone else's database is being reprimanded. So the person at the cage was depending upon that manual verification taking place that did not. And that's why that person was addressed. And as Sean had mentioned earlier on, whenever one of these things pop up, and they do, it becomes a teachable moment that we then run it up the flagpole at our regular meetings and have a discussion and point it out to everybody to make sure that doesn't take place in the future.
And just real quick, I think importantly, and please confirm this, but the John Fitzgerald in Maryland, let's say that was that ID, wasn't a self-excluded, wasn't a flagged, wasn't.
Good point.
So when he presents that, we don't see that at all, right?
Yeah.
The John, I don't know which one I used. The other one was in the self-excluded in Pennsylvania, but we didn't see that ID. So the person handed us an ID that didn't indicate being flagged initially, and he's right. And back to the no excuses. We're not debating this or saying that this should excuse it. We should be on top of our game and have caught that, in this case at the analytical level. But it is tricky. That's all we're trying to point out. These things are not ever just perfectly black and white. They're a little bit complicated. So really, as Tom just mentioned, a tremendous learning opportunity because this one's much more than just a surface discussion. So at the end of the sentence, the end of the paragraph, it happened, we take ownership of it. But it was a little bit tricky because two different IDs, two different jurisdictions.
And I don't think the facts were obvious from the consent agreement without hearing the background.
And just maybe to add one more thing, because I take very seriously responsible serving of alcohol, right? And mentioned in there was 4 drinks, I think it was, or so.
Yeah.
But that was over 5 hours. The ramp training that we teach all our people, and every employee at the property is trained, is 2 drinks per hour guideline, right? So technically, if the person had more than 8, and it depends on blood alcohol level and body size and all those things, but 4 drinks over 5 hours was not.
That's not an issue, Mr.
Yeah.
Sullivan. Thank you.
That's
Thank
not
you for-
really
Yeah, thank you for
pertinent, I
addressing that,
guess.
but yes, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not. Any questions or comments from the board?
Aside, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Dillon.
Yeah, I have one question. I'm just curious. So if she would have never went to the cage or produced her player's card, she could have stayed on the floor, or she could stay on the floor for...
Yeah, I mean, I hope this isn't an unknown matter, but we may have self-excludeds in there, and we don't have a clue. If they're ID checked because they appear under 30, 35, I think 30 or 35? 30, then it'll pop up, right? But if they're 56, they walk right by, we welcome them in.
Yeah.
The next stopgap is either winning a jackpot, where we come over and request ID, test that ID, or cage transaction. Again, financial transactions with a ID. But yeah, I don't want to say this because, we have people come in all day long that might be self-excluded. The great news about a local small joint like ours is we get a list of pictures and names, and we're really good at seeing people we know. We know a lot of these people in the community. But if they're infrequent visitors or they're out-of-towners, we may not see them. But we call people all the time on the floor who haven't dropped an ID just because we pay attention to the information received from the Gaming Control Board. But that is the way that works. And in this case, she went by 7 times, 8 times, but she's 56. She didn't get ID'd.
Commissioner Mazzano Diaz.
Yes, in addition to reprimanding the individual that was involved, are there any other checks and balances that any corrective actions that you are taking to sort of prevent this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think just real quick, again, back to the weekly meetings that we have called property protection. All these matters get brought up in that meeting, and they're all sent downward to all the departments about being cautious and being protective and being extra diligent about these things. In this case, we felt that person was the only one to be reprimanded. Again, progressive discipline. And really, because it was complicated, a different ID, it wasn't termination or it wasn't the highest level of reprimand, but this person's now on notice that if something like that happens again, it progresses.
So how have you corrected your system so that it will catch that?
So
Your IT system.
That's right. Good point. And that's behind the scenes. That's getting with the database department and making sure that every single name is scrubbed, right? And look for those commonality and then go deeper into driver's license numbers, birth dates, those type of things, and try to clean those up. But, at that time, this person just didn't get checked yet. May have in a week, may have in a month, but the timing wasn't sufficient where they were called out. So constantly trying to keep that list updated. When you have multiple casinos, it's difficult.
In addition to what Sean said, following this incident, the database marketing team, which is a corporate position, so they're not based at our property, they did revamp their standard operating procedure as it relates to how these received self-exclusions that come through the third-party interface, they're automated, how they are received, how they are verified against the state's actual database, and how they're pushed up against our loyalty system to where they're looking for the similarities that Sean mentioned to see if we can tie multiple accounts out to the same person. Also, I was made aware that subsequent to this, the individual who had the responsibility of conducting that review was replaced by another individual. So that was another thing that they did to address it.
And-
Someone a little more conscientious.
Last, I'll say that if you're excluded from Maryland, you're excluded from Philadelphia, or from Philly, and you're excluded from Pittsburgh. If you're excluded in sports betting, you're excluded from the casino. So instead of trying to attack these different exclusions, we just put it all together and said, excluded one, excluded all. So that helps as well, too. But humans and errors on occasion, but learning opportunities, discipline when needed, and hopefully we won't be back here.
So they were caught the second time they went to the cashier. Did they show a different ID?
I think the cage cashier had time, and he was able to look closer at the system to look for duplication. Happened to see it.
Okay. And on the first incident in this matter, it wasn't the same security officer, right?
No.
That let the underage person?
No, this was actually a cage cashier as well as the database person down behind the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? If not, may I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Stadia Casino Westmoreland doing business as Live Casino Pittsburgh as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and video gaming establishment licensees Love Travel Stops and Country Stores, Inc., doing business as Love's Travel Stop number 324, Love's Travel Stop number 358, Love's Travel Stop number 366, Love's Travel Stop number 407, and conditional licensee Love's Travel Stop number 731. The matter will be presented by Senior Enforcement Counsel David Tepper. At this time, I request that the representatives for Love's who are present, please introduce themselves for the record, and that all non-attorney witnesses please stand and be sworn.
You swear, if you don't swear, you affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I love you, God.
Edward Winkowski, Greenberg, Troy. Last name is Winkofsky. Should spell wink of sky.
And Shantae Mouton, spelled Shontai, last name Mouton.
Good morning, Chair Smiler. During my presentation of this consent agreement, video gaming terminal establishment licensees Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores, Inc., doing business as Love's Travel Stop number 324, Love's Travel Stop number 358, Love's Travel Stop number 366, Love's Travel Stop number 407, and video gaming terminal establishment conditional licensee Love's Travel Stop and Country Stores, Inc., doing business as Love's Travel Stop number 731 will be collectively referred to as Love's.
Thank goodness.
When the Love's entities that currently hold full VGT establishment licenses filed applications with the board, Love's was owned by a series of trusts, 4 of which met the threshold to file applications for licensure with the board. In December of 2020, a new entity, Love's Family Holding LLC, was created. Later in the same month, the shareholders of Love's and Love's Family Holding LLC entered into a contribution agreement in which the Love's shareholders contributed their shares to Love's Family Holding LLC. Thereafter, instead of the previously licensed trusts, Love's Family Holding LLC became the 100% direct owner of Love's. Love's failed to notify the board of this transaction, which was discovered by board staff in April 2023 after the Office of Enforcement Counsel made a formal request for information. Additionally, Love's Travel Stop number 731 applied for a VGT establishment license in February 2021 after this transaction occurred. When Love's Travel Stop number 731 applied for a VGT establishment license, Love specifically advised the Bureau of Licensing that there had been no changes to its ownership or management structure since the applications for the other Love's establishment licensees were filed, which was not the case. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board approve this consent agreement between the parties. The terms of the settlement include that within 5 days of the board's order approving this consent agreement, Love shall pay a civil penalty in the amount of $25,000 for these violations. Also, within 5 days of the board orders approving this consent agreement, Love shall pay the board $2,500 for the costs incurred by board staff in connection with this matter. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to address them at this time.
Loves, would you like to address the board, please?
Briefly, Chairman, good morning, and members of the board. Thank you for having us here. Aside from presenting to the board today, I want to thank Shantae for coming in from Oklahoma City late last night, and with the exception of speaking to you all, getting to know Shantae a bit this morning at breakfast, and just in working with her, it's been a pleasure. So thank you for that. I also want to thank Council Tepper for guiding us through this process. This was an internal reorganization, and there was a breakdown in communication between the family office and the members of the compliance and licensing team. That has been solved through Shantae's work with her team. They're having regular meetings now as outlined in the consent agreement, and certainly education on the family office side as well. So this was a miss, like the others before you, accepting responsibility and taking proactive, corrective action going forward. We'll look forward not to making this mistake again or being before the board.
Any questions or comments from the board? Commissioner Manzano-Diaz.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This internal reorganization, can you just tell me what exactly happened that it fell through the cracks?
You want me to try, and if I mess it up, you can go? Sure. So they, as Council Tepper just walked through, they introduced a holding company, and then there was a reorganization of the trusts that were in that ownership. Those actions were taken at the family office level, and was not communicated to the compliance team. And so when the compliance and licensing was interacting with the board agents, did so with no ill intent, just lack of knowledge, and that was the breakdown.
Any other questions, comments? I have a question. The compliance team, what is your role as outside counsel?
Outside counsel, yeah.
Right, as outside counsel, do you communicate with the compliance team?
Sure, I work closely with Shantae.
So they did not tell you about this at all?
I'm sorry,
About the whole restructuring?
I found out about this when Council Tepper and others started looking into it, and they contacted me, and we helped to make sure that the board was receiving all the information, which they certainly wanted to do, and just navigated the consent agreement.
So, ma'am, I'm assuming that going forward, when some of these activities take place at the family office, that you will be advising outside counsel so that it doesn't happen again?
Yes, internally, we've also, I've been added to corporate governance committee so that I'll have visibility to these types of changes in the future. I've also provided training to my staff so that they can recognize these types of things so we can make sure that they are reported.
Excellent. It's always good to have an attorney involved.
I'm not sure that's true, but thank you.
An attorney, I think it's true.
Careful. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the consent agreement between the Office of Enforcement Counsel and Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted. And
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in from Oklahoma.
Thank you.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in each petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of the inimical conduct may be placed on the board's public website. Once again, in each matter, we will provide a brief summary of the facts and make a request for the appropriate board action.
Michael Rowland with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda is a request to place Rasheed Harris on the involuntary exclusion list. Rasheed Harris cheated by past posting wagers after the cards were revealed while playing Ultimate Texas Hold'em at Harris Philadelphia Casino and Racetrack. He did this on 3 occasions and received $475 to which he was not entitled. The Pennsylvania State Police escorted Mr. Harris from the floor, and he refused to make restitution. Mr. Harris was criminally charged and permanently evicted from the Harris property. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Rasheed Harris on the involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves that the board approve the addition of Rasheed Harris to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Juan Sanchez, SANCHEZ, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Dwayne Allen Holthouse on the board's involuntary exclusion list. While Mr. Holthouse was a patron at Lady Luck Casino, he stole the wallet of another patron containing credit cards, a driver's license, and $180 in cash. The Pennsylvania State Police arrested Mr. Holthouse and criminally charged him. Mr. Holthouse was permanently evicted from Lady Luck Casino. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Dwayne Allen Holthouse on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hickernell moves that the board approve the addition of Dwayne Holthouse to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board's involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Manzano Diaz, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter on the board's agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Jory Peterson on the board's involuntary exclusion list while playing a table game at Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh. Casino staff determined that Ms. Peterson was intoxicated and halted her gaming activity. Ms. Peterson was asked to leave the casino, but she refused to do so. She subsequently engaged in disorderly conduct, ultimately leading to her arrest. After she was arrested, Ms. Peterson spat on a casino staff member, continuously resisted arrest, and injured a Pennsylvania State Police trooper. Ms. Peterson was criminally charged and permanently evicted from Rivers Casino, Pittsburgh. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board place Jory Peterson on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Manzano Diaz moves that the board approve the addition of Jory Peterson to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Ralston seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good morning, Thomas Monahan, Monaghan, with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Dana Flynn on the board's involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Flynn grabbed a stack of gaming chips belonging to another patron. The gaming chips were positioned on the rail of a craps table in front of the patron at a live Philadelphia casino. Mr. Flynn physically struggled with the patron and was able to forcibly obtain possession of the chips and flee the table. Mr. Flynn exited the casino and fled from the property. Mr. Flynn was permanently evicted from Live Philadelphia and criminally charged for his actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Dana Flynn on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Ralston moves that the board approve the addition of Dana Flynn to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Regan, seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
The final two matters on the agenda are related, and with the board's permission, I'll read one set of facts for both individuals. Robert Brewer and Tyleek Hunter picked up a wallet off the casino floor that had been dropped by a Mount Airy Casino employee. Mr. Brewer and Mr. Hunter took cash from the wallet and exited the casino. Both individuals were permanently evicted from Mount Airy and were criminally charged for their actions. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Robert Brewer on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Commissioner Regan moves that the board approve the addition of Robert Brewer to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dermody seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And at this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests the board place Tylee Hunter on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Any questions or comments? May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dermody moves that the board approve the addition of Tylee Hunter to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list for the conduct described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Commissioner Dillon seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you, Cyrus. The last item on the agenda today is public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to address the board? Seeing no one, thank you very much. That concludes today's meeting. The next public meeting of the board will be held on Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 at 10 a.m. at this location. May I now please have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dillon moves to adjourn.
Commissioner Hickernell seconds.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion granted, and we are done. Thank you.